You are watching the New American Media.
You are listening to the New American Media.
And, of course, if you're listening live, that took just a matter of seconds. And if you're listening on, on tape delay, what do you call it? Just on the archives, either on thenewamericanmedia.com or youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia. Thank you very much for listening. Please click subscribe and leave your comments below. If you're not following us on Twitter, please do so. We're at American_media_. Stay connected with us. Follow Zach. He's at Z Baris. That's ZBARIS. And search our page on Facebook for The New American Media. So, Zach, it was I don't know. I don't really want to say it was a busy NBA trade deadline because things happened.
It was kind of dull.
Yeah,
not much. There was very little action.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the big whopping pieces, but for a lot of these teams jockeying for playoff position, maybe trying to make a championship run, maybe trying to rebuild for the future. Every one of these deals is important in its own regard. So I'm thinking maybe we could break it down a little bit. Maybe we should start with the Thomas Robinson deal with Sacramento. Maybe kind of just tell us what's going on there, because a lot of people were scratching their heads, especially Northern California basketball fans.
I really don't understand what Sacramento was trying to do. I don't know if it was a salary dump or what. I mean, I can just tell you from when I saw the trade yesterday, I just looked and I said, what? The other night when it happened, I was literally looking and I just said, this is possibly the dumbest trade I've ever seen by Sacramento. You know, you take Patrick Patterson back, who mediocre forward, not going to really give you much, and you trade away a top 5 pick. You passed up on Damian Lillard and Harrison Barnes to draft this guy. I would stick with him for more than 3 months of an NBA season to determine whether he's going to be a bust or not. He was so good at Kansas. He was in talks to be the number 2 overall pick behind Anthony Davis. He was determined to be the most NBA-ready player in the draft. A lot of people had him pegged as the Rookie of the Year. Daryl Morey in Houston got a steal, an absolute steal.
Do you think that's going to help Houston solidify themselves as the 8th seed in the West and keep the Lakers out?
I think it will. I think it helps. I think this helps give Robinson some playing time. I think it's a nice move. They got rid of Marcus Morris. They traded him to the Suns so he could go and be with his brother. He really hasn't done much all year. And Phoenix couldn't make a splash at the deadline, so now they have to pull up. We've got the brothers here. Come watch the Twins play. They can basically say that. That's it. Because they're so bad and they're not. Like I said at the beginning of the year, I thought Phoenix was definitely going to be an entertaining team to watch. They're just not. I didn't think they would be good. I said they would be entertaining. And getting back to Houston, though, Houston already robbed the Thunder of James Harden in a deal. Yeah, they gave up Jeremy Lamb, but I don't know how great Jeremy Lamb's going to be. He's a decent 2-guard, great 3-point shooter. And they gave up. They gave up which will be the Raptors pick they gave up which would be the Raptors pick, which is going to fall in the 6 to 7 range, but with the way they're playing with Rudy Gay, it doesn't look like it. They've been playing great. They're 6-3 since the trade, and they've beaten some good teams. And James Harden is on that level of he's hit NBA stardom. He really has. He's looked fantastic since he's been on the Rockets, and he's made them competitive. He's been unbelievable this year. And if you saw his stat line the other night against Oklahoma City, the guy put up 46, 8, and 6.
Those are big time stats.
Yeah, and I think he put up 46 points, and I believe it was only 19 shots. I mean, that's absurd.
Very efficient.
So you have to look at it that way and just go. You just have to say, wow. That's all. That's all you can say. He's putting up a ridiculous stat line. Do I think the Cavaliers? I was the one advocate for the Cavs to pull off that Trezor. That would have been a better deal than Oklahoma City got from Houston or anywhere else. And I think the Cavs should have pulled the trigger. They chose not to. I don't know if they have the deal on the table or not. I'm not saying they did. But I'm saying I'm sure that could have probably gotten a deal done.
Well, there are some players where they have one good burst and then they cash in. And some people, it's like, all right, you left a comfortable system where you were actually really good there, and now you're, I don't know, when you're not exposed, when you don't have the umbrella over you, you get soaked. But James Harden, sitting there as the
Could you just imagine Kyrie
man.
and James Harden playing on the same team?
Oh, well, of course. Of course I could imagine.
And they really sit, I don't think anyone was expecting Harden to be this good. I still remember when I ripped Oklahoma City for the trade when it happened. and then they were having this great year. They still are. But still, they would be so much better with James Harden than they would be with, Kevin Martin. And just Houston, I think Houston right now, Kevin McHale has adapted his system for his players. Kevin McHale never ran a running system, and now he's doing that in Houston this year. He's fit his needs to have Jeremy Lin. Lin's playing in this up-tempo system now, which he was playing in New York. It's fitting him really well. He's been thriving as of late. Over Sheep looks good on the defensive end as the offensive game has definitely improved from a year ago from when he was with Chicago. And Harden's been great, and now you have to take a look at Thomas Robinson is going to be playing valuable minutes on the stretch. I think when you put him in a good environment like Houston that has winning players, that has a great culture in the locker room, I just think it's a fantastic fit, at least on paper. And we could be looking 3 years down the road from now and saying, what the hell were the Kings thinking? Going, this is a guy who puts up 17 and 9 every night, 18 and 9. This is a guy. How do you trade an all-star?
Yeah.
How do you trade him for nothing to save, for some cheap ownership so they could save $3.5 to $4 million a year? Are you kidding me?
Well, Robinson, Lin, and Harden are not LeBron James, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade, but those are three solid players. And Jeremy Lin just put in 29 points the other night, 6 rebounds, 8 assists. One of his better games as of late. And, I mean, this team is really set up where it was a disaster recently, and now it's good.
Don't forget, Houston has $30 million in cap room coming up.
Man.
They have a ton of cap space. They can go out there. And imagine if Thomas Robinson pans out and they can go, if they make a nice little run in the playoffs this year. I'm not saying they're going to get out of the first round, but if they can take a team like Oklahoma City or you can suddenly make that free agent push for a guy like Dwight Howard if you really want to. Because, and trust me, Daryl Morey's going to do it. Howard's not going to re-sign the day he hits free agency with the Lakers. He's going to play it out a little bit. I know how Dwight acts. He's a drama queen. He's a diva. He's going to go out there and drag us like LeBron did 3 summers ago, except worse.
Again, we got to deal with this again. Really?
Yeah. He dealt with it worse than LeBron last summer. I can't imagine this being any better.
I agree with you, but really, we got to. They were saying that they're going to build a statue of Dwight Howard outside of the Staples Center. I just heard that.
Yeah, so for 1 year of the Lakers not making the playoffs, they can build him a really nice statue.
Hey, I just want that draft pick from the Lakers, so I'm rooting for him to make that 8th spot. I could care less about anything else.
Even if they get in their A seed and they get knocked out in the first round, how is that going to entice Dwight to stay? He's with a coach that doesn't particularly fit him well. If he doesn't match well with Kobe, that means another year of going down and not working. But like I said, they could be on a whole new level. They could be playing this season, dedicating it now to Jerry Buss, and they could show up and play now. They did against the Celtics the other night, which they looked really good.
Oh yeah, they were smoking them the whole game.
But like getting back to Houston though, if Thomas Robinson does pan out, you have a nice young core in Houston. Every guy in that team is young. Ashik is 25 or 26. Thomas Robinson's 21. Jeremy Lin is in his mid-20s. I think he's 24 or 25. James Harden's 23. You have a really nice young core. And I don't think it would be too hard to go to Dwight Howard and basically sell him on the Rockets going, listen, we're a 45, 46-win team this year. We bring you along, we're sitting at the top of the West. No one can touch us.
Well, and you also get to say, Dwight, you get to step into the large footprints of Yao Ming. You get to step in the tradition of Hakeem Olajuwon. This is a center-dominated town, and you're the next great one to be here. Like, oh, okay, cool. I don't think it's going to be I don't think it's going to be an entirely hard sell. Houston is a decent size. It's a big market. Houston is a big city, and I don't think it's going to be. They have warm weather. It's not going to be an entirely tough sell. Those are the Rockets are one of the teams looking. He's looking at Dallas. I don't think he looks at Atlanta, even though it's his hometown. I just cannot see him playing with the Hawks. Hey, okay. Let's bounce to that because I wanted to get into a couple of the trades that were made, but let's just transition to the Hawks because this is one of the interesting trades that was not made. Break down what Danny Ferry's doing down there in Atlanta because a lot of people were expecting to see something pulled off and it just didn't materialize.
I fully expected Josh Smith to be traded, and then when the deadline was sitting there with 10 minutes left to go, I'm like, where's he going? Where's he going? Is he going to Milwaukee? I'm thinking if Milwaukee's able to pull off this deal for Monte Ellis, it's a good-looking deal for Milwaukee, I thought. Because if Milwaukee put a team on the floor of Redick, Brandon Jennings, Josh Smith, Larry Sanders. I would have think Milwaukee would have made a nice, interesting jump, in the Eastern Conference, but it didn't happen. I don't know what Danny Ferry's exactly trying to do. I don't know if he kept Smith because the right offer wasn't on the table, or if he decided last minute, he goes, I'm going to make one last pitch to Chris Paul and Dwight Howard this summer to try to lure him down to Atlanta. And he goes, and I need Josh Smith to do that, otherwise we're completely out of the running this year.
Huh.
So I don't know what Ferry's objective was, by not trading Josh Smith. Maybe the right offer just wasn't there. He couldn't acquire draft picks. But I certainly thought when Houston acquired Robinson the night before that he could use being a chip to get Dwight, to be using a chip to go and get Josh Smith. I definitely thought that was a possibility. And especially if Thomas Robinson plays decent down the stretch this year, I think it could be possible for a sign and trade next year. Because if you bring in Josh Smith and then suddenly, Smith and Howard are best friends in Houston, you could suddenly go and look at it and go, okay, this is gonna definitely lure Dwight Howard down to Houston. That's why they would do something like that. Even though I think long term you have Robinson signed much cheaper, and he's younger than Smith. But Smith is a great player in this league. I don't know if he's max money worthy in this league, but I mean, if you can bring Dwight Howard in a package deal with him, then maybe he is worth the max, as long as Dwight is back to full strength.
Well, that's an interesting way to look at it. I mean, is Chris Bosh a max player, or was he the player that was necessary to bring the super team down to Miami? Okay, so I guess he technically is a mostly max player.
It certainly wasn't Amari Stoudemire. It wasn't Carlos Boozer. And they needed a 4 or a 5 to go down to Miami to basically play. Miami couldn't go without a center. So I think Bosh was like, that piece that just basically, it's not the centerpiece, but he's the piece that you need in order to include the centerpiece in the deal.
Right.
So Bosh turned out to be worth the max money because they brought LeBron down there. And Bosh had been coming off of a fantastic season too with Toronto before he went to the Heat. There's no doubt about that. So, Bosh at the time, no matter what, he was getting a max contract from someone. It was just a matter of who. There were a lot of desperate teams out there, especially big market teams, that hadn't had success in a long time, and they could have used Bosh as a secondary piece to go and try to win a title.
Well,
granted, Miami without LeBron, they could have spent the money elsewhere, and gone other places with the money, and I think they would have been a very good team too. But they obviously made the right move by signing LeBron. They were in the championship after year 1, didn't win. By year 2, they were winners. In year 3, they were the front runners to win it again. This might be their last big title window as long as winning it. Granted, they're going to be atop of the East again next year. There's nothing stopping them, especially when you have LeBron playing as well as he is.
Well, trading is always fun because everybody's an expert beforehand. Everybody second guesses after it happened. And it's really just gambling. It's being on Wall Street or being in Vegas.
It's a gamble. And
absolutely.
GMs live and die by their trades. Daryl Morey, everybody was wondering what he was doing in Houston the last couple of years, especially this past year, they failed big time. They're going to wind up, they have all these picks, they've got like 10 picks in the first couple of rounds. They have all these average players. He just traded Kyle Lowry away to Toronto for a draft pick next year. And they go, why did he just trade away his, fantastic point guard going saying Jeremy Lin? You go, what the hell are the Rockets doing? As what people are saying. And then suddenly he just goes and pulls off the James Harden deal out of nowhere. That it was stuff like that happened. And, Daryl Morey was probably a risk to get fired after this year. He's not under contract for next year. But he was one of those guys where people were going, oh, the guy's as good as gone. He's known as the gambler around the league. He takes more shots than anyone. On any player, he's willing to take more risks than any GM I've ever seen in the league. And so far, all of his moves for the most part have paid dividends.
Risky business, man.
Sometimes risky moves don't pay off. You look at it, Chris Grant is one of those guys who Chris Grant is one of those guys. He's not one of those guys who makes risky trades. He makes trades that he feels will benefit him. Like when the Cavaliers a couple of years ago made the Kyrie Irving trade. I still remember sitting there the night before the deadline, hearing about it. I get a call going, the Cavaliers are about to trade, Mo Williams for Baron Davis. And I go, I didn't even know a pick was involved. There had been no rumors that the pick was involved when it was originally made. I heard about it a few hours before it had gone down. And I was like, okay, I guess, the Cavaliers want to at least have Baron Davis, and then I find out, and then I hear it's a protected pick, and then, I still think the Clippers are foolish. I still think the Cavaliers would have done the deal even if the Clippers would have done the top 1 protection. They would have still made that deal. But, The Clippers obviously chose not to protect it. Neil Olshey and Gary Sachs obviously chose not to do that, and look what happened. They wound up, granted, they still wound up, and they were very fortunate to wind up with Chris Paul in a trade. But imagine having Kyrie Irving, Blake Griffin, and, Dwight Howard instead of Chris Paul.
Oh, boy.
They could have used those assets and made a Dwight Howard deal
I'd say
instead.
so.
And, and suddenly, Irving signed cheaply. Blake Griffin, he's making money now. But, just imagine that roster, how much better that would be
you're
if
so
they
right,
had it.
though. You're so right. It's not like LeBron leaves the Cavs. We become the worst team and get the number 1 pick. We needed that chip. We needed that lottery ball from the Clippers. That's what got us Kyrie Irving. It was the lottery pick from the Clippers. It wasn't from us being the worst team in the league. We had to pull off a deal. And I think when you bottom out, you really need to bottom out. You really need to clear out all of the garbage and start fresh. Tear the house down and dig a new basement, start a new foundation. And Chris Grant's been doing okay.
Yeah. And it's honestly a good thing for the Cavaliers. It would have been a disaster. Had that team gone and won 40 games a year after LeBron left, they'd still be winning 40 games a year. And that's the problem. Chris Grant was able to justify everything by getting rid of a guy like Mo Williams, getting rid of J.J. Hickson. He was able to basically justify all those moves by going, listen, we don't have the pieces in place here. This is an old team. We need to knock out salary. We need to go and acquire picks. We need to build this the right way. Obviously right now we are unable to attract free agents to this city. There's something about it where we cannot attract free agents here. So we need to start from the bottom up. We need to get high draft picks. This team has to have a terrible record. We need to go and build through the draft. And that's what they've done. They've gotten a great player in Kyrie Irving. They got a fantastic player in Tristan Thompson too, for where they selected. Granted, yes, they could have had Kawhi Leonard or Klay Thompson. But, for being the 4th pick, they wound up getting, right now Thompson has outperformed Derek Williams and Enes Kanter, the guys, and Jonas Valanciunas, the 2 guys that were drafted in front of him and the one behind him. The Cavaliers did on that day, they were trying to acquire a 3rd pick to either draft a Kawhi Leonard or a Marshawn Brooks. They were high on both of them. It was just hard to, justify taking Kawhi Leonard as the 4th overall pick in that draft, especially when Thompson has a higher ceiling. And Kawhi Leonard is in a great system in San Antonio. I think he's a good player. I don't know how great he would be outside of the system, in Pop's system. Danny Green is doing well in Popovich's system. He was the 14th man on a 17-win team 2 years ago.
The 14th man.
He's starting for the Spurs. I think a lot of it has to do with Popovich's system, especially playing with Ginobili and, Parker and Duncan and Tygo Splitter. I think that has a lot to do with it.
Absolutely. It's different if you're plugged and played into a place like the New England Patriots or the Baltimore Ravens, or I'm jumping sports here obviously, but when you go to a team that has success, it's different than trying to make it work in Sacramento with the Kings. It's different than trying to get on the same page with XYZ franchise that never seems to have their act together. Oh, I don't know, Cleveland Browns. Maybe we're turning that around now. But the system with Popovich, the Spurs have been good for 2 decades.
They drafted, they got Thompson and Irving. Those are your 2 centerpieces. Granted, Tristan Thompson looks like he can be a future, a very, very good number 4 in this league. He's been playing lights out since Verjao went down. Other than the other night against the Hornets, the one time they're on national TV, he had a bad game. But like I said, he's looked fantastic over the past 2 months. His PR has been off the charts. It's been in the 20s since Verjao went down. And before that, don't forget, we're talking about a guy that hit a PR of 9. That was way below average. And now he's sitting there at the PR in the mid-16s. Which 14 to 15 would indicate an average player in the league. He's been above that, which is definitely good news for a second-year guy who was very, very, very raw.
And that's taking a crisis with Verjao going down, turning it into an opportunity for the young kid to get more playing time.
It's almost been a blessing because at the beginning of the year, people were sitting there going, "Oh, Thompson's more than nothing as the 8th or 9th man on this team." That's what he looked like. When he was terrible at the beginning of the year. There were games he put up 2 points and 7 rebounds in 32 minutes, and you're just like, ugh. You'd be looking at his stat line, and you're just like, this guy's a bust. They could have had Klay Thompson. They could have had Kawhi Leonard.
Well,
there were a bunch of other players they could have had. And nowadays, you're looking at it, the Cavaliers made a really nice pick. If you're doing a redraft of the first round from 2 years ago, in a lot of redrafts, Thompson could be selected as the number 2 overall pick in that draft.
Yeah.
He could turn out. There's a very good chance he'll turn out to be the second best player in it. Klay Thompson had some character questions, is why I heard the Cavs soured on him. Last minute. Apparently, I think I don't know what exactly he had, and I don't want to say it on the air in case I'm wrong, but I know he had something. He had some character issues that had come up, that had arisen. And then this year, you had Dion Waiters, who obviously had the character issues too, but he's been, like I said, he's been solid for the Cavs. And the Cavaliers, they obviously passed on Harrison Barnes. They passed on Thomas Robinson. They passed on Damian Lillard. I don't know how great of a fit Lillard would have been with Kyrie, because they're close to being the same type of player. But, imagine them in the backcourt together. I just don't know if it would mesh well.
Right.
But that having been said, Dion Waiters looks like a guy who can, he can be a legitimate scorer in this league and be a legitimate number 2 threat on a good team, or number 3 threat. That's what the Cavaliers need. I think Waiters, if his career pans out like it should, and he develops at a nice level, I think you could see him be an all-star in the future. I don't want to say he's not going to be, because he's the second leading scorer for all rookies this year behind Damian Lillard. He's having, his game has improved much in the second half. He's not complaining to the refs so much anymore. When he doesn't get the calls, he's getting back playing defense now, and he's taking more efficient shots, which I've just been noticing. You watched in the Hornets game there, he played very, very well.
Well, I remember Waiters earlier in the year against the Clippers. The kid was hoisting things up like crazy, random off balance, but he was draining them all, and I said, wow.
Well, that's just his shot. His shot is just an off balance looking shot.
Yeah.
Every shot he takes just happens to look off balance. That's just his weird jumper.
Well, I remember LeBron's three-pointers.
Fadeaway, one-legged jumper is what everything it looks like he shoots.
I remember LeBron's three-pointers. They look so janky those first few seasons, and he's gotten a lot better at it. But
yeah, that's what it takes. As long as Waiters develops properly, he's willing to listen to coaching. He has his potential. He's got very high potential in this league. The Cavaliers saw something in him, and the Cavaliers base a lot of their scouting system on analytics. And the computer projections obviously showed that Dion Waiters was their guy. They passed up on a guy like Harrison Barnes, who's having a nice rookie season. They passed up on Lillard, who's going to win the rookie there. But, the Cavaliers were never going to draft Damian Lillard. It was already a given. So they were not going to pair him with Irving. But, like I said, they still passed on some, pretty good players in that draft, in order to draft Dion Waiters when they could, they weren't even willing to risk to trade down a few picks to draft Waiters because they were afraid he might get taken, So there was that risk, too. And I still remember when the Cavaliers drafted him, I said, this is a total boom or bust pick. I was not a fan of the pick. I remember coming on, I bashed the pick very, very hard.
I did not love it, much like the way I did not love the Brandon Whedon pick for the Browns last year, 22.
Well, I never loved the Whedon pick either, but I'm saying, getting back to the casting, I just don't know what was, I obviously know what the Cavs were thinking. They based a lot of their system on an analytical approach. I think Tyler Zeller was a great trade because you didn't want to put 3 rookies, especially, 2 second-rounders on your bench this year that most likely are going to amount to nothing in the pros. Usually second-rounders are not valuable assets in the pros.
So trade 2 of them for a late first-rounder that might give you something.
Exactly. Tyler Zeller, I think, does have the future as a backup center in this league, a decent one at that, too. So I think the Cavaliers have gotten 4 nice pieces. You have 1 superstar, and you have 2 potentially really good players in Thompson and Waiters, and you have a potentially decent backup center in Tyler Zeller. So I think the Cavaliers have hit on all their picks. You can't label any of them as a bust. You can't. And I think that's the nice thing. You're not sitting here and going, they didn't draft Austin Rivers going, this kid's having one of the worst rookie seasons we've ever seen. I made a comment the other night, I tweeted it, and I said, Austin Rivers is a poor man's Allen Iverson, and since Allen Iverson's completely broke right now, I don't even know what level that would put him on.
Beyond broke. Wow.
So I don't exactly know where Austin Rivers stands, but and I wanted to just mention this is a guy like Austin Rivers, AAU ball totally kills these kids' careers because Austin Rivers, rather than taking a smart approach to his basketball career, rather than being a complete player like Kyrie Irving was, Austin Rivers' coaches told him, you're the next Michael Jordan, you're the next Allen Iverson, you're the next big scorer to hit the NBA. We're going to make you, the ball every time is going to go through you. You don't need to pass. You're going to sit there and you're going to drive every time. You're going to take shots. An AAU ball essentially killed this kid. He is an exceptional talent. But like I said, he's not exactly the easiest kid to coach. And you do as you're told when you're younger, and that's basically what he's reverting to right now. Is he's playing to his, he's playing like a high school AAU game, and he did that at Duke. He wasn't a great fit on Duke, but the Hornets saw his potential because he does have that, he does have a ridiculous potential. He's got a big frame, he's a decent sized guard. So, You know, but like I said, at the same time, though, I don't know. You know, but when you're drafting at 10, I think where they drafted him, you're able to take a risk like that. You know, you're going for more reward in risk than you are for just a solid player at that point.
Yeah, top 3, top 5, you got to get results. Yeah, top 3, top 5, you need results. But at 10, 15, 20,
you have to go for the results.
Take a flyer.
You know, you take the guys with the highest potential. And then coming mid-lottery, you take the guys who you just feel, you know, that's where you have to start taking guys and you go, listen, we can either sit here, take a guy who we know is going to put up 11 and 8 someday, never really a great player, just an average small forward, or we can go for the guy who's just going to be a complete bust, or we can go and draft him and he could be the next NBA superstar. It happened, and that's what the Hornets did. They took their gamble. Now Rivers is having a terrible year. This doesn't mean he can't improve, so there is room for improvement. I always like to see the jump. I can never label a player a bust after the rookie year. It's just too hard to do, because a lot of players come out and they have a great sophomore year. So I always wait to judge after 2 years to 3 years. It's not even fair to judge a rookie after 2 years, especially if they only played 1 year in college, like Kyrie and Thompson.
Right.
But like I said, both of them, especially Kyrie, has shown that he's on a superstar level already in this league. He's already an all-star. He's at that he's already a top 3 point guard in the NBA as it is. Tristan Thompson's on that level now where we could see major improvement. If the guy ever develops a decent jump shot or, outside of the paint, you're looking at a guy that can easily pop in 16 points a game. So there you go with Thompson. Thompson you can't label as a bust either because that was a draft where there was supposed to be very, very little talent. And the Cavaliers got, a guy who can be a starter in the league for a long time in Tristan Thompson.
Right, a solid piece. Well, let me get to this. Let's talk about some of the other pieces that moved around at the trade deadline. What about J.J. Redick? How do you feel about that deal?
I don't like the deal for Orlando at all. I think Orlando should have just bit the bullet and kept him for what they got. I know they got Bino Udrich in the deal, who I'm not a huge fan of. He's a decent backup. But I just don't see where the deal brought Atlanta. Orlando, I'm sorry. I don't see how it helped improve Orlando. It didn't. It makes them a little bit worse this year, but they didn't get any future assets, and that's what bothers me so much about the deal down there. What's the point of even making the trade? Just to trade the guy? If he's going to walk at the end of the year? That's just what's so confusing to me. I just don't understand it.
Do you think it would be fun being a GM? Because, you work as a scout, but do you think it would be fun being a GM? Getting to actually make these moves?
I do. I think it's a lot of fun. Just being at meetings and stuff. I love just being at meetings and being able to go over this stuff. That's the stuff that's always fascinating. I said that's my dream job. Or being a director of player personnel, getting to evaluate talent. I love doing that. And, being a scout is in a tough position, too, because, like I said, I scout guys out west. There's a lot of potential. Like I said, out west, there's Anthony Bennett, there's Shabazz Muhammad. You're talking about guys that are going high in the lottery. Scouting them, you don't want to misjudge them. I still remember when I watched Anthony Bennett at the beginning of the year. I was at a UNLV game at the beginning of the season, and I think it was the second or third collegiate game, and I was watching him, and I just go, oh, this kid's a guaranteed top 10 pick in the draft. And I remember someone saying to me, they go, who's Anthony Bennett? And I go, just trust me. I go, it's going to be a top 10 pick for sure. Just wait. I watched him. The kid put up 19 and 8 in 25 minutes. The first time I watched him, I go, he's going to be a star in college basketball. He's a top 10 pick. And I look at this, and I sometimes have trouble evaluating guys because, I sometimes feel very weird about, grading a player out who has such high rankings. And I look at the guy and I go, I don't see any future potential in him. And I'm honest about my opinion. I've been wrong on some players. I'm not wrong on a lot, but I have been wrong before.
Well, nobody wins all of their bets. Nobody does. Nobody could win all of their bets. That's just not possible. Like
I said, though, I judge teams, though, like I said, I never understood, I don't know what's going on in a team like Sacramento's scouting department or Orlando's for right now. I just don't understand how you trade J.J. Redick for absolutely nothing. I think they may have been able to get an asset from one team or two teams, a late first rounder, for a team that, was on the verge, of going somewhere.
What?
I think, but Milwaukee, you didn't even get the draft pick, you didn't acquire anything in return. I don't even understand it really from Milwaukee's standpoint, because you already have a guy like that in Mike Dunleavy sitting on your bench who's a really efficient player when he actually gets playing time, and now you have a logjam at the 2.
You know what this year reminds me of, Zach? I don't know if you've ever been out doing some trick-or-treating. You're from Ohio, as am I.
Oh, I did trick-or-treating when I was young.
Oh, trust me. I went trick-or-treating, homie. No, but you know what I'm saying? This year's trade deadline kind of reminded me of being excited, going out, ready to go get all the candy, and I saw a lot of front porches with their lights turned off. I kind of saw a lot of teams that just weren't in the market. They didn't have any candy to give. It was just a whole lot of, we're not participating this year. I saw a lot of teams sitting on the sidelines is what I'm getting at. Did you get that vibe as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of teams were willing to make the moves. I think a lot of teams sat back and they go, unless we feel we're that close to contending for a title, we're not going to give up a first-round pick for J.J. Redick. He's going to walk at the end of the year. Yeah. And his agent came out and said the other day that he wants $10 million a season. J.J. Redick by no means is worth $10 million a season. He's worth about 6 to 7. So I don't blame teams for not willing to want to give up the pick. The only teams I felt that, could have offered up a pick and could have taken on the salary, was a team maybe like Oklahoma City could have taken it on as a two-guard, because Redick would have definitely helped with their outside shooting, a team like that. Would he have helped out did Dallas need him? No, Dallas is not even sitting there in the playoffs right now. So, it's pointless for Dallas to make a move like that. It was pointless for a lot of these teams to go out there and try to make a move to go get him.
Right.
Chicago, they didn't want to give up. Chicago's not giving up Jimmy Butler for a half a season of J.J. Redick. I'll tell you that right now. They're not giving. They're not going to give up a valuable piece for half a season of Redick. And the Bulls, and the Bulls pick is probably, the Bulls pick is going not. It's going to be in the later ladder of the first round. But the problem is you can't give up young assets, especially when you have Boozer's contract expiring, in a couple seasons, or he's going to be gone probably in a year. And then you have, Luol Deng too. You need to keep this team getting younger. You can't, a team like the Bulls that can't make a great move for that. But, I could have seen a team like Indiana jumping in there and trying to make a move to get Redick to come off the bench, because
Indiana maybe. Right, because they're good, but they got a behemoth to get past in the Heat,
Now, if I were a team like Indiana, I would have jumped the gun and traded a first-rounder for J.J. Redick at that point, because I would have said, listen, we have a window to beat Miami this year. Granted, I don't think they're better than the Heat.
But they played them tough last year. They almost knocked them out last year.
They've played them tough this year. They've looked great. Now that you get Danny Granger coming back, why not add another piece to it?
That's a good point. That is a good team.
You're solidifying your bench now as a team, because the problem is the Heat are so unbelievable on the fast break. They're one of those teams that can put up 12 points, like I said, in a matter of a minute. When they start locking down as defenders, Wade and LeBron can go off at any point of a game. That's just how they are. I've seen LeBron doing it himself. I've seen LeBron put up 10 points in 30 seconds in Milwaukee a few years ago. It happened when he was on the Cavs. So that can happen at any point. You need someone to basically counteract that and come in there and take a nice three off the bench. That's why I thought J.J. Redick would have been a great fit in Indiana. If they could have pulled off some kind of deal for him.
Well, let me ask you about this one though. Let me ask you about Jordan Crawford, because that was another deal that.
Love the deal for the Celtics.
Let's break it down, because I think that's the only other one that I had listed as we start running out of time here. That was the only other one that I really had listed as one of the major deals to discuss. Talk about it for a second. That deal.
I think Jordan Crawford has a lot of potential. I really like him as a Wizard, but it's Washington's one of those teams. No matter how good you are, it seems like the Wizards will always stink. They just do. Last year they went, they traded, JaVale McGee in Denver has been phenomenal for the Nuggets, since they traded him. I remember saying to the kid a few years ago, I go, this kid's an all-star talent. And people were looking at me and they go, JaVale McGee's a bonehead. And they go, he's an idiot. There's no way he's ever going to do anything. And I go, trust me. I go, he's a talent. He's just not being used properly in Washington. As soon as he goes to Denver, he was looking like an all-star last year. They should have and almost beat the Lakers in 7 last year in the first round. They almost took him out. They were real close. And, I think he's going to do well in Boston. But at the same time, though, I wonder what Danny Ainge is thinking, because, it's one of these controversial things that Danny Ainge either has to blow up the team or they're going to be really bad in a year or two when Paul Pierce falls off and KG retires. Boston is not, that's the problem is, it always have that problem in trading a franchise player to get younger. Granted, should they have traded Pierce? Yes, I think they should have. I think their title run is over, especially without Rondo. To try to make a run at the title. I just don't think they have it. Rondo's been so explosive against the Heat in past years, and when you don't have that, I think it's a problem. I think Boston's a very mediocre team. I don't think KG would have accepted a trade anywhere unless Pierce was gone. And I think if you could have dealt Pierce for some young assets and some nice pieces and some picks, I would have said jump the gun and take it, and then go out and deal KG to the Clippers, because you can go and get DeAndre Jordan, Eric Bledsoe in a deal, and Caron Butler. Suddenly you're filling out your future roster with DeAndre Jordan, Eric Bledsoe. It allows you to be able to go and trade Rondo and completely overhaul the roster over the summer. But Danny Ainge chose not to do that. Now Kevin Garnett's going to retire at the end of the year. They're still sitting on your hands an aging Paul Pierce, who's still very valuable to a playoff contending team, as basically a third option. And now and who knows what team's going to want him next year. He has a huge deal. So it's just, that's the problem. And he's just making a ton of season. And, I don't know how many years Pierce is locked up for, but like I said, Danny Ainge should have blown it up in Boston. They're not going to win the title this year, unless somehow miraculously LeBron James goes down or Dwayne Wade goes down again.
Oh. Is that a premonition?
And I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, you have teams like the Chicago Bulls are better than them. The Indiana Pacers are better than them.
They're getting healthy right now, while the Heat have been healthy almost all of the year. Right.
Exactly. Dwayne Wade hasn't had any significant injuries. So I don't know what Danny Ainge is thinking. But I think there would have been a lot of backlash in Boston, especially because Boston seems to be very loyal to its athletes, and its athletes for the most part are very loyal to Boston. And
yeah.
So Danny Ainge just probably couldn't jump the gun. It would have been a very, very unpopular move had he gone and done it. But it was a move that needed to be done for the future of the franchise.
Hey, you know what?
You're looking at a team that's going to go and winning 20 games in about 2 years.
Well, Boston could be in the running for a LeBron James sweepstake if they played their cards right.
LeBron James will not go to the Boston Celtics.
I'm not saying he will. I'm just saying. I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
that is not happening. Mark my words on that one. He's hated in Boston. Boston hates LeBron. LeBron hates Boston.
Yeah, but you know what? Well, he's hated in Cleveland, and he might come back to Cleveland. So go figure. But
there's a difference. But he's not going to be a Boston.
Well, I'm
Celtic
just saying there's going to be a time approaching soon where Boston is going to have to reinvent a new dynasty, and it really seems with Ray Allen getting out of there, Pierce getting old, Garnett maybe retiring. It seems like we're on the verge of that reset button. I don't know if it's getting Dwight Howard over there. I don't know if it's doing something, but I don't know. We are at the end of a dynasty in Boston. It sure seems like, but I don't know. Let me ask you this: what surprise are you expecting for the rest of the season? We're just about out of time here, but I mean, with all the trades going on, the Lakers are always a huge story because they're the Los Angeles Lakers, of course. Other than them, can they get back in the playoffs? Are there any big storylines that you're following throughout the rest of the year? Is there something that you're anticipating that some people might not see coming, or something you're really excited to see?
Derrick Rose is the biggest story coming out. If he's able to come back and play, which he's been participating on 5-on-5 drills.
Yeah, I saw that.
For the past couple of weeks, he's been participating. He looks as healthy as ever. He looks just as good. But he says he's not going to risk coming back and pulling the Ricky Rubio where he isn't ready to play, to play in competitive ball yet. He's not going to go to the grind and be able to play in the last 5 games of the year and go, okay, I'm suiting up for the playoffs, which is the most competitive basketball there is, where every team starts to lock down on defense and it becomes a lot tougher and you don't want him being rusty.
Right.
So like I said, expect Derrick Rose to basically, I do think he'll play this season. I can't see him sitting out the year. I just don't see it happening. But I think that's the biggest storyline in the league because it changes the landscape of the Eastern
Absolutely.
Conference. You're looking at a team like the Bulls.
You forget about the Bulls. You're just like, yeah, it's a good team, but they're not going to make it. They don't have Derrick Rose. And you're like, oh, wait, he's coming back. Oh, yeah, the Bulls are good.
Good defenders on the team. Bellinelli's a good defender. Jimmy Butler, with the emergence of Jimmy Butler, will Luau Deng was out. They have some valuable pieces for the playoffs, and especially if you get a healthy Rose back, even close to 90% for the playoffs. You're looking at a dangerous team that can compete with the likes of Miami in the playoffs. Chicago, other than the game the other night against the Heat where they looked terrible, I was at the Bulls Heat game over New Year's in Miami, and the Bulls went and they beat Miami. They played a fantastic game. They always play Miami hard, and if you get a healthy Derrick Rose back, it's only an added chip, especially because Kirk Heinrich had been playing well before he was hurt the other night. Heinrich had been playing well. He found his shot offensively. It allows Teague to move back into a bench role. I think Chicago's one of those teams that can definitely give Miami a run for their money. I'm not saying they're going to beat them, but they're definitely a team with a healthy Rose that will give Miami a nice run for their money. And every other team in the East, the Knicks certainly don't want to face the Bulls. The Bulls have crushed the Knicks this year without Derrick Rose. They've been putting up, the Bulls never put over 100 points in a game. Yet they've done it every time they played the Knicks this season and they beat them by 20 points every time.
Well, I think you phrased it right, Zach. You said it's going to completely change the landscape of the East. And I think that might be the dark horse story to watch over the next, well, let's just call it the second half of the NBA season as we gear up for the playoffs that the Cavs will not be participating in once again. But we're just about out of time, Zach. As usual, thank you for joining us on the program. We will keep our eyes on Derrick Rose returning. Any other final thoughts for everybody out there tonight?
I just want to thank you again for having me on. I look forward to being on next week so we can do our free agent show.
Yeah, let's do that. We'll get into 2013, 2014. Look at the long-term landscape, because what you mentioned earlier is that, Brooklyn trying to make a big splash, they kind of get impatient, and then they make a bunch of deals, and then they're stuck. And you look at the Heat, they plot and scheme and connive for 2-3 years, and they pull off a mega deal, but it takes a long time to get your cap space right. So, yeah, I think maybe next week let's do that. Let's look at 2013, 2014 free agents, and we'll kind of shoot a projection, maybe 2 years forward, and take a look at that. That sounds like a plan. Well, I appreciate you being on the program again, so have a good weekend, and I'll be talking with you soon, Zach.
Thank you.
Take care. That is Zak Baris, everybody, one of our good pals, longtime Cleveland sports fan, NBA scout, Los Angeles resident now. I suppose you could say we have a lot in common. I, being from Ohio, being a Cleveland Indians, Cavs, Browns, and Buckeyes fan. No, that's the Ohio State Buckeyes, not the Cleveland Buckeyes, of course. And living out here on the left coast in Los Angeles. But I want to thank Zach. Go ahead and follow him. He's on Twitter at ZBaris. That's ZBARIS. And please do us a favor, follow us on Twitter. We're at American_media_. Search us on Facebook, The New American Media. Go to youtube.com/The New American Media and subscribe to our page. Please leave your comments below. We definitely love the interaction with everything that we're doing, everything we're posting, the retweets, the comments. This is an ongoing conversation. It never really stops. And check out our homepage, thenewamericanmedia.com. I think stay tuned. You're going to get some really cool stuff coming along the lines over at thenewamericanmedia.com. I think this year is the year that it really begins. It's been a bit of a labor of love, you could say, over the past few years, but I think we've stabilized our footing and we're getting ready to take off. So we're going to make a hard break here, take a little quick commercial break, and we're going to be back talking with Blake the Eccentric Wally, kind of doing a top news story extravaganza, bonanza, buffet, blitz, fiesta on the other side on Agree to Disagree. We'll be right back. Agree to Disagree. Yeah, it's a radio show we have on thenewamericanmedia.com every single Friday at 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Join the show. What do we talk about? Politics, religion, and spirituality. Basically anything you're not supposed to talk about in a bar. You're not supposed to have these conversations inside of a bar, but we have them every single Friday at 4:30 p.m. Pacific on thenewamericanmedia.com. Join the show, offer your opinion, and let's agree to disagree, but let's have a good conversation.